Good Sunday afternoon, everyone. It is September the 13th, 2020. It is currently 4:20 p.m. Did I say a.m. for my last live episode? Now I'm thinking I said it was a.m. I don't even know what time it is anymore. It's 4:20 p.m. Central Time. Now, there was a time in my life that 4:20, I could offer some jokes, but I won't go into all that. Sunday, September the 13th, 2020, 4:20 p.m. Yes, I'm here at Victory Baptist Church, located in Ovalo, Texas. I'm sitting here in the back of the sanctuary. It's an empty building. I've been here now. I got here about 7:30 this morning. Left at about 12:30. Got back about 2:45. I've done 5 hours of teaching now, about 5 hours of live broadcasting. And I'm here to do a little bit more. See if I can give you something else that's interesting. Now, this one, you may like this, you may not like this, because this is going to be where I hand you the topic, I hand you the information, and then if you want to gain anything from it, you're going to have to sit down with a notebook, a Bible dictionary, and start meditating and doing the work for yourself, all right? This is kind of me just giving you kind of a little devotional exercise, all right? A little devotional exercise. Let me explain how this all came about. Late last night, I'd been watching UFC, Bellator, been watching a lot of MMA, been watching those fights. I think I'd flipped over to football, try to keep up with the Lakers game, just kind of, watching a little bit of sports. And as it got later in the evening, I kind of realized, my evening devotional time, I kind of overlooked that. And now it's getting late. I know what I need to do. I need to, even though I probably should try to get some sleep because I got to wake up early for church tomorrow. I can't go to bed until I have done something for my devotional time. So I grabbed my little devotional guide feature. It's a devotional guide that I love. We used to use it here for the church, but I love this thing. So I pulled it out and I just started. I didn't flip to today, to the date for yesterday. It just flipped open. And when I looked down, I simply saw the reference Isaiah 44. I'm like, oh, Isaiah 44. Okay. And then I noticed, as this devotional guide has a tendency to do, sometimes they'll spend an entire week or more each day on one section of Scripture. So almost kind of like a verse-by-verse devotional look at a passage of Scripture, which is why I love this devotional guide. So I looked at it and I'm like, okay, Isaiah 44, they spend 1, 2, 3, at least 4 days, maybe 5 days on this section of Scripture. I'm like, okay, this could be an interesting, maybe an hour of just devotional reading and devotional thought. And so I grabbed a notebook and I'm like, okay, let's turn my focus to the things of God this evening. I've been focused on everything else. So let's try to do this. So I sat down, grabbed a notebook. And when I looked at the devotional guide, and the title for the first one they covered Isaiah 44 verses 1 through 8. And the title is "Beside Me, There Is No God." Now, because I've read the Bible, over and over and over, then obviously I was like, okay, Isaiah 44, this deals with idols and idolatry. Beside me, there is no God. They're gonna demonstrate to us the foolishness of idolatry, how God is the true God. Idols are foolish. We should avoid idolatry. Okay, I kind of know where they were going. Okay, but just because you know where they're going doesn't mean you discount learning it. Okay, sometimes as Christians, we got to remember no matter how many times we've heard something, we still need to hear it again because we may know it, but sometimes we need to really know it. It's got to get from the head into inside of us, right? Into our heart. So it begins to change us and direct us and begins to transform us. So I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I think I know where they're going. And so I said, you know what? Instead of reading what they have to say, which is my general rule, I set aside the devotional, I grab my Bible, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to read the Scripture, and then I'll start building my own kind of like little, my own devotional thought. I'll write out my own devotional thought. Then I'll go see what they have to say, compare the two, and then that'll kind of make up my devotional time. Well, things didn't go as planned because I picked up my Bible and I read these words, Isaiah chapter 44, verse 1. Yet now hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus saith the Lord that made thee, and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay. So we've got three names here. All right. We've got Jacob, Israel, and Jeshurun. Now, Jacob is repeated twice. I think we can see that. So let's go through this again. Yet hear now, O Jacob, my servant, Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus saith the Lord that made thee and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. I'm like, okay, well, clearly that reference to Jacob is not the Jacob that we know in the Old Testament as a person. Okay, so clearly Jacob, Israel. So Jacob, Israel here is being referred to as Jacob. Israel obviously is being referred to as Israel. And Jeshurun is also being referred to as Israel. So in a roundabout way, we have three names for Israel, right? Jacob, Israel, obviously, and Jeshurun. Well, that's interesting. Why utilize these three names? Why is Israel called by these three names? Why? Is there something significant here? Why are all three used in two verses? Like, is there something going on? So I started thinking about this, all right? So we have Jacob, we have Israel, Jeshurun. Now, there are three different names here applied to the Jewish nation. I think that that's fair. Two of them, namely Jacob and Israel, were born by their great ancestor. I think we can agree there. And by him, it was transmitted to his descendants, right? Jacob, Israel. The third was never born by him. Jacob was never called Israel. Obviously, Jacob's name was changed to Israel. All right, so he bore the name and then transmitted it to his descendants. He was never referred to as Jeshurun. And it's applied, Jeshurun is applied to Israel here and in the book of Deuteronomy, I think in chapter 32. I think in chapter 32, Jeshurun is used for Israel. So we got Jeshurun, Jacob, and Israel. Now, what is going on? So I started thinking about this, and I'm like, well, the occurrence of all three in two verses has to be considered remarkable. It has to be considered it's not a coincidence. There's got to be something going on here. All right. And so I started thinking, well, the order here, I don't think is accidental. It goes from Jacob to Israel to Jeshurun. Now, Jacob is repeated, which kind of messes this up a little bit. But in my mind, it goes Jacob, Israel, Jeshurun. Is that order? I don't think that order is an accident. I don't think it's that. Like there's something that has to be going on here, at least in my mind. All right. So I said, if you think about it, when I started just trying to write this out and trying to think about it myself. And if you start thinking about it, I think you can agree that the prophet here, Isaiah, he begins with the name that belonged to the patriarch by birth, right? Jacob, that was his name by birth, right? So it's the name of nature, right? It's the name of nature. It reflects his nature. And we believe his name does reflect his nature, right? Because it contains some indication of his character, right? He passed on to the name. Oh, well, we'll stop right there. I'll stop right there before I read anything else down. So Jacob is really the name of nature. It reflects his nature, right? Look up the name Jacob, right? Look. In fact, I've got a Bible dictionary right here. I didn't even think about doing this, but I'm going to see what shows up here. Just going to see here. Jacob, he supplants, the supplanter, right? And if you read the story of Jacob and you read the life of Jacob, his character is not so great at times, right? At times you're kind of like, Jacob is really not such a great guy. He supplants, right? He tries to take, he tries to grab onto, he tries to overthrow, he tries to get what he wants. So it's the name that kind of reflects nature. All right, I think we can agree with that. Now he passes on to the name which commemorated the mysterious conflict where as a prince Jacob wrestled Jacob had power with God and prevailed. That's the whole wrestling with the angel kind of idea. His name is changed, right? His name is changed from Jacob to Israel, all right? And then the prophet here ends with the name Jeshurun, of which the meaning is the righteous one, and which was bestowed upon the people as a reminder of what they ought to be. So we go from Jacob nature, to Israel, to Jeshurun, which is kind of the righteous one. Are all three names there to kind of indicate in some spiritual way this process of God choosing someone, changing someone, and declare and becoming righteous before him? Is there some kind of symbolism here, some kind of something symbolic going on here? I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's fascinating that these three names are listed here: Jacob, Israel, and Jeshurun. All right. So, So I put this down. I did some, and I was looking up some different things. So not all these notes are my own. They come from all kinds of different sources. I started thinking that possibly the teaching, possibly the three names in the order that they appear, do they possibly kind of give us some idea of the path of transformation? Does it kind of demonstrate some kind of journey, this path of transformation? I'm not sure. One commentary put it this way: every Jacob may become a righteous one if he will tread Jacob's road. We start with that first name of nature, which according to the meaning that's given to name Jacob, it means a supplanter or the supplanter, not without some suggestion of craft and treachery in it. It is descriptive of the natural disposition of the patriarch, which was by no means attractive, cool, calculating, subtle, with a very keen eye to his own interest, and not at all scrupulous as to the means by which he secured them. He had no generous impulses and few unselfish affections. He told lies to his poor old blind father. He cheated his brother. He met the shiftiness of Laban with equal shiftiness. He was a diamond cut diamond all through. He tried to make a bargain with God himself at Bethel and to lay down conditions in which he would bring him the tenth of his substance. And all through his earlier career, he does not look like the stuff of which heroes and saints are made. That is true. I mean, Jacob was a supplanter. He was selfish, self-seeking. He used deception and trickery. I mean, there's just a lot about him that wasn't very good. And that's how one commentary described him. They used more descriptive words, but you get the idea. It was kind of like come on, Jacob, right? So, all right, there's Jacob, all right? But in the mid-path of his life, there came that hour of deep dejection and helplessness when, driven out of all of his dependence on self and feeling around in his agony for something to lay a hold upon, there came into his nightly solitude a vision of God. And conscious weakness, and in the confidence of self-despair, he wrestled with the mysterious visitant in the only fashion in which he can be wrestled with. He wept and made supplication to him, as one of the prophets put it, and so he bare away the threefold gift blessing from those mighty lips whose blessing is the communication, and not only the invocation of mercy, a deeper knowledge of that divine and mysterious name, and for himself a new name. That new name applied a new direction given to his character. All right? So another commentary puts it this way: up to this point, he had wrestled with men whom he would supplant for his own advantage by craft and subtlety. Henceforth, he strove with God for higher blessings, which in striving he won. All the rest of his life was on a loftier plane. Old ambitions were dead with him, and though the last of those names in our text were never actually borne by him, he began to deserve it and grew steadily in nobleness and beauty of character until the end, when he sang his swan song and lay down to die with thanksgiving for the past and glowing prophecies for the future pouring from his trembling lips. All right? So they're saying that this is like a path of transformation. You have Jacob, who was in his old nature, was self-seeking, and then he's brought to a point where, in a sense, he's wrestled with God, and he is, in a sense, broken, transformed, and then ultimately, as he lives his life, he goes from Jacob to Israel to Jeshurun, and begins to demonstrate this kind of character of righteousness. Now, obviously, we could argue that we are all Jacobs by nature. We are, in a sense, we are transformed and made into Israel by being broken, right? We come in contact with God, and we become broken and humbled, and then we are declared to be righteous because of, obviously, the imputed righteousness of Christ. But I don't know if there's a significance there, but that's just some thoughts. Just some thoughts thrown out. I may have to come back and work on this, but do you believe that do you believe there's something going on there? Is it just a coincidence? Do you believe there's something significant? You can look at it like, and here's really the thing. In the context of Isaiah 44, right? Yet now hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. Thus say the Lord that made thee, which formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant, and thou Jeshurun, whom I have chosen. Verse 3, for I will pour water upon him that is thirsty, and floods upon the dry ground. I will pour my spirit upon thy seed, and my blessing upon thy offspring, and they shall spring up as among the grass, and as willows by the water courses. One shall say, I am the Lord's, and another shall call himself by the name of Jacob, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto the Lord, and surname himself by the name of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, the King of Israel, and the Redeemer, the Lord of hosts. I am the first, I am the last, and beside me there is no God. Why does the prophet utilize all three names? Is it to really demonstrate this, that no matter which name you call yourself, if you're a part of Israel, no matter if you call yourself Jacob, no matter if you call yourself Israel, no matter if you call yourself Jeshurun, that God is about to bless them. He's about to do something for them. He's about to, there's a coming blessing for all of them, no matter by what name they call themselves. Is this just to be utilized as a reminder that God is going to bring blessing to Israel, no matter by what name they're called? Is that the point here? Or is there some greater spiritual lesson to remind Israel of what they've been through? They were a Jacob, they were made into Israel, and they will ultimately be a Jeshurun. They will ultimately be declared righteous. Is this a reminder of God's, the whole path of Israel demonstrated by these names? I don't know. You can work on it. You can think upon it. There's a lot there that we could really take apart. I've got a lot of notes here, but I think there's just something important here. All right. Yeah. I've got a lot of notes here, but I'm not going to go through all of them. I may have to break these down and come back to this, but I at least wanted to just throw this out there as kind of a devotional exercise. Isaiah 44, three names for Israel: Jacob, Israel, obviously, and Jeshurun. Why are they used? Look at the context of Isaiah 44. See if you can figure out why they're used. Do you think there's some symbolism here? There's some significance here? What do you think? Look up the meanings of the names. Verify the meanings of the names. See what you think. See what you can conclude. Share your thoughts. Please share your thoughts. By all means, share your thoughts on it. Just run wild. Just see what rabbit trails it takes you on, and let me know what you think. You can email me your thoughts at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I could do more teaching on it, but but I'm afraid that if I continue to go through all my notes, then I'll rob you. I don't want to rob you. I want you to dig in and see what you can find. I just thought it was interesting. For some weird reason, that's what jumped out at me. This is one of those situations where I was reading like, wait, what are these three names here? I've probably read Isaiah 44 a bazillion times and focused on something else, but this time those three names jumped out at me. So what do you think? Let me know. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. All right, a little devotional thought on a Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon. It's not Sunday evening yet. Sunday afternoon. All right. I look forward to hearing what you discover. All right. Everyone have a great day. God bless.